Hey everybody, David the AI Guide here. How are you today? We're going to talk today about transportation and AI. And the reason why is because I do a lot of different videos on a lot of different subjects, but I don't really focus down on one one topic consistently. And there's been so much breaking news in transportation and AI that I really want to drill down on this. That way, it's going to make a lot more sense. So let's back up to the beginning with why I started the AI Guide. And our motto here at the AI Guide is making AI human. What does that mean? Well, it means that there's a lot of information on the web about AI, but most of it's technical or descriptive, and that's not what we're about. We're about what is the human impact of AI and what is the impact on each of us going to be to all of these technologies being developed. And furthermore, we need to think, how is this going to affect my opportunity to make a living in the career I've chosen? One thing that I've said on several videos is that AI is not going to be selective about what type of jobs it hits. It's going to hit everything. And just in reading some of the things that I've read lately, I think people underestimate still the impact of AI by quite a bit on certain professions. One of the reasons that I want to cover transportation today is because transportation is key to everybody, right? It determines how you get to work. If you have kids, how you take your kids around, how you go on vacation a lot of times if you're not flying somewhere, although we will talk about that part of transportation also in this live stream. But transportation is at the center of everything. And one of the things we've talked about a lot is that AI is deceptive, and exponential technologies like AI are deceptive. And they're deceptive in the sense that when things first start developing, it's really not something you can notice. And this is typical of exponential technologies. The development is very, very gradual. And then all of a sudden, it hits an inflection point and becomes exponential, and then change is very rapid and dramatic. So it's my belief that we are beyond the inflection point with AI, and several of the converging technologies that are associated with AI and driving massive changes in society coming soon. So AI, as you know, if you listen to my history videos, has been around for a long time. Since the 1950s is when it was first starting to be discussed. And then there was a real effort made to get it going in the 60s, which didn't work out. And there's been a couple of periods where AI sort of died off. But this is a period where that will not happen. Why? Because computing power is available now widely with cloud computing that can drive AI forward. This was the constraining resource before. And one of the things I'm going to talk about in just a second when we start on the subject of transportation is what facilitates this rapid change aside from cloud computing, meaning flexible, unlimited processing power. Well, there's something else going on at the same time right now in many different ways that is positively affecting AI's growth. So let's get into it. And as I said, today's focus is on transportation. And we're going to do a couple of things here. But the first one is we are going to look at surface transportation. So what I'm going to do is talk about some of the videos that I've done over the last 2 months and try to pull all this together into where things are. And where things are is pretty amazing once you pull it all together. So, a little while ago, I did a video on the invention of the world's largest computer chip. And why is this relevant to transportation? Well, this is one of the things I was referencing just a second ago, in the sense that there are other technologies that are needed to accelerate AI. Well, processing power is one of them, not just computing power, but actual processing speed and power. And this is governed by computer chips or using multiple computer chips, right? So this world's largest computer chip is being developed specifically for AI, and it's the size of a dinner plate, and it is theoretically going to dramatically accelerate the processing power of computers that are built specifically to do AI work. So that's one piece right there. Then similarly, I did a video right after that one that I just mentioned about Tesla inventing their own computer chip. And the reason why is because the most powerful AI chips on the market have been gaming chips invented principally by NVIDIA. So this is what Jeff Hinton and the folks in his orbit figured out was, hey, gaming chips which render video in real time can be used for AI. And NVIDIA realized what was happening and started making chips that were specifically for AI and more powerful. Tesla needs an even more powerful chip than what they could buy from NVIDIA to facilitate self-driving. Why? Self-driving is hard. And we're going to talk more about that in a second, but it's very, very hard. You've got other cars, you've got human beings making mistakes and doing random things that are dangerous on the roads from time to time, causing accidents. And so self-driving is hard. There's also another condition governing self-driving and AI that I'll talk about in just a second. So chip manufacturing and processing power is very important to AI going to the next step. Another way we can tell that is I did a short a little while ago, I'm going to say it was a month or so ago, maybe 2 months, about the fact that Intel Corporation started a division called Mobileye. And Mobileye is self-driving software for cars that is agnostic to all of the car brands. So any car brand, except probably Tesla, because their car is very structured to the way they do things, but all other vehicle makes can use Mobileye's technology. And Mobileye got the first license to start testing fully autonomous cars in New York City. And this was back on July 21st. So this is very recent. Mobileye chose New York because of how challenging it is. And this is what I'm saying. AI is hard. So if Mobileye can be successful in one of the most demanding self-driving environments on the planet, self-driving is going to spread like wildfire. In the meantime, on one of my shorts or videos, I talked about how Ford has perfected its self-driving for freeway only, and they're rolling it out on their F-150s and one of their Cadillac models this fall, right now. And so this is a breakthrough because you have a major manufacturer rolling out full autonomy on freeways only across a massive fleet. The F-150 is the largest selling vehicle in the world, single vehicle. So think about the data that Ford is going to get. And AI progresses by data. We've talked about this too, that an algorithm needs huge amounts of data to get better and better and better at what it's doing. Well, if you have initially hundreds and then thousands and then tens of thousands and then hundreds of thousands of F-150s on the road collecting data, the algorithm learns very, very fast. This is happening now. Then I also talked about how Hyundai has joined with Aptiv in a joint venture called Motional, and they unveiled their first Lyft robo-taxi. And this thing is level 4 autonomous, which means it can operate without a driver. And they're going to be rolling this out in 2022. No, 2023. So 2 years, 2 short years until robo-taxis by Lyft are starting to be all over the place. Then very recently, I talked about the Ford F-150 and the Lightning. This is a brand new truck, all electric, just coming out. It will have that AI self-driving for freeways that the rest of the 150s are being rolled out with. And there's so many reservations for this truck that they're adding 450 jobs and expanding a manufacturing plant. So that's Ford Motor right now. Ford has already invested almost $1 billion in the F-150 Lightning program, but reservations are now over 150,000. And that means that pretty quickly, partially self-driving vehicles are going to be on the roads all over the United States that are all electric. Now, I'm going to talk about one more thing in this area, and then this is going to tie all the pieces together and why I'm talking about this topic today. So this article is Walmart to test self-driving cars in multiple cities with Ford and Argo AI. What does this mean? Well, this is going to be delivery vehicles. So this is not private passenger vehicles, but it's delivery vehicles. And when a company like Walmart, who has nothing to do with driving, gets into this, what does that mean? I'm going to tell you what it means, having worked in huge corporations my whole career and understanding how they operate. This means that self-driving technology is now maturing. Otherwise, Walmart would not be getting into it. And they're also saying the same thing that Mobileye and Hyundai Aptiv is saying with the Lyft robo-taxi. They're all saying 2023. So this is why I picked to talk about transportation, because there's all these different pieces going on and it's all coming together and it's going to be very visible. It will not be visible for 2 more years, but from 2023 to 2025, it's going to become much, much more visible and disruptive. So that means that in terms of the focus here at the AI Guide and making AI human, this means that job disruption is going to start. And it's going to start in taxis and Ubers and Lyfts within 2 years. And I've also done many videos about fully autonomous trucks already doing runs across I-10 across the southern United States. And so hopefully you guys have seen the movie Logan. Why? Not because I'm advocating the movie for any reason other than they have gangs of self-driving trucks driving at super high rates of speed, very, very close to each other. They're drafting each other. This is what's coming, and it's coming by the middle of this decade. So this is going to be so visible and so dramatic that people mentally are going to have trouble adjusting to this. And this is why I started the AI Guide, because the mental shock of what's coming this decade by 2030 is going to be so big that people are going to have a lot of trouble coping with it. And we're just talking about one sector today. Now, I saved this one for today. FedEx to send packages on 500-mile trip within Texas, fully autonomous trucks. Here we go again using Aurora's computer-driven AI self-driving system and Packard trucks, which are Freightliner and some other brands. This is now. And if FedEx, one of the biggest trucking companies in the entire world, is doing it, then this is soon. So, but self-driving is hard, like I said, and thank you to joining just now. I appreciate it. I did a short reel recently on how they developed a new AI in Korea to spot potholes, because potholes are really bad for self-driving vehicles. So they're trying to solve all the problems to make self-driving a reality. And as I just said, from all the examples that I read to you, we're 2 years away from autonomous vehicles now being on the road, which is faster than I expected. This is what happens with exponential technologies, that what happens is that you just don't realize how fast it's coming. And this is coming really, really fast now. And then finally, I want to emphasize that this whole self-driving thing is not restricted just to cars and delivery trucks and tractor trailer trucks. So here's one that I just did recently as a short about John Deere partnering with Bear Flag Robotics to create fully autonomous tractor kits that can be mounted on any tractor to make them totally autonomous. And I talked about AI in farming at the very beginning. AI is being used broadly in farming now, very broadly. I'm not going to get into that today, but I will say that the self-driving revolution is going to hit anywhere there is a vehicle, and that includes farms. So that's it on that element of transportation. Thanks for checking that out. The next thing we're going to do is a different aspect of transportation. And this aspect of transportation is very cool. And I've done a number of videos on it, but it's worth tying all the pieces again together, like we just did for ground transportation, fully autonomous vehicles. And this is air. So I did a short about 6 weeks ago. Air Cars Flying Car completes first intercity flight. Now this one had a pilot and another guy in it. So it's like a regular car, but it flies. So, and someone is driving it. So this is step one, right? Air travel is more tricky. Why? Because the consequences of a mistake are way more serious. First of all, it's bad enough when planes crash and people who are on the plane get killed. But when you have flying cars, a flying car can crash through the roof of a house and kill everyone in a house. So it's much more regulated even than the trucking industry is, and it takes more work to get there. But then I talked about how there are companies right now like Lilium Air Mobility who is building a self-flying system in Florida that's going to fly between all the major cities in Florida: Jacksonville, Tampa, St. Pete, Sarasota, Daytona, Orlando, Melbourne, Port St. Lucie, West Palm, Fort Myers, and Naples, and eventually more. But they're picking places that are not the huge airports, right? Like where air traffic is a problem, like Palm Beach, West Palm Beach and Miami and stuff like that. Air cars are going to change the airline industry in a fundamental way. And at first, there will be pilots in them, then the FAA here in the United States and similar agencies around the world will certify the algorithms for self-flying, and then they will be fully autonomous. The FAA is already doing that work, by the way. So this is in progress now. All the work with the FAA has already been done for the Lillian, Florida thing. The approval of the passenger terminals, the approval of the air routes, the approval of the vehicles are now in final testing and undergoing certification right now. Once they're certified, they can start flying passengers. So again, we're thinking 2 to 3 years here, about the same time as full autonomy with cars. Now, why does this change the whole airline industry? Because you can go somewhere that is a long drive very quickly on demand. It'll become like having your own private airplane, except you won't have to know how to fly. You won't have to get licensed, and ultimately it won't even need a pilot. So what does this mean? Well, let's say that just for example, you live in Des Moines and Iowa, and you want to go to Kansas City for dinner. No problem. You get in one of these vehicles, you fly over for half an hour, have a great dinner in Kansas City and fly home. World changed. And the other thing that this is going to do that I just thought about is this is really going to further drive what's happened during the COVID pandemic, when all work went remote and people started leaving the cities and moving to the country for a better quality of life. This kind of transportation will significantly accelerate that further, because you'll be able to live anywhere. You don't have to live in the city, because the commute on the roads into the city is a nightmare. You can take one of these flying cars. By the way, these fully autonomous vehicles are in development by Uber and all the big transportation companies like that, and being in the licensing process right now for their vehicle and for flying in major metro areas from like building to building. So in New York City, from building to building, like uptown Manhattan to downtown in a few minutes, for example, or in LA where it's super spread out, you can fly across a part of LA that would take you 2 or 3 hours to drive in minutes. This is a game changer. And then finally, I was saving this for this live too, and I've talked about this company before, but their airplane is in certification right now in Europe. So the same thing is happening in Europe that's happening in the United States. Magna X, and these guys are actually, they're here in North America, but there's a different one in Europe that's at the same point. Sorry about that. But half of flights in the United States are 500 miles or less. And what Magna X is doing is building an 11 passenger plane with a pilot for now, instead of, a 737 is 100 people. So like I said, transportation revolution on the short-term horizon now. We're talking years, not decades. So transportation and AI is, the algorithms are getting better and better and better. The chips are getting better and better and better with more and more processing power. And the network that drives all this is getting better and better with the rollout of 5G, and the processing power. You can run the AI at a base station and run it remotely in all these autonomous vehicles, and it'll aggregate all the data and dramatically accelerate everything. So this is big time. This is really something. Be ready. So now we get to why I started the AI guide and what does all this mean? It means that if you are in the transportation industry, meaning you drive a taxi, you drive an Uber, you drive a Lyft, you drive a package delivery truck for UPS or FedEx, you drive a tractor trailer truck. That's a little bit different, and I'll talk about that in half a sec, but now is the time to start your career transition. Start learning something new. This is why I put up that free resource, because you can learn to program without going back to school and get a great paying job that is secure, and you don't have to worry. So in my opinion, why wouldn't you do that? If you know your job is under threat, and all the jobs that I just told you about are under immediate threat. 2 years is nothing. 2 years goes by like that. So now is the time to start preparing. Check out the free resource, download it, go through everything on the resource is free. There's 3 different introductory AI courses and an introductory video that I did. And then I'll be coming out with a new resource very shortly that'll take you to the next level. It'll be paid. This one is totally free, but this next resource will take you beyond the introductory understanding of AI to programming, and you can get a job and you'll get certified potentially. Some of the resources that will be offered, you will be able to get it certified, and that makes it much, much easier to get a job. So this is why I'm doing this, folks, because the transition is going to be brutal. It's coming faster than I expected, probably faster than many people expect. There's, of course, some people are talking about this, but they're not talking about the urgency of finding a different career if you're in one of these easily automated fields like driving. Easy now, very difficult. That's why it took 10 years to get to this point. But now everything is coming together. So you want to prepare, and you want to prepare yourself for the benefit of you and your family. And if you have kids or will have kids, you want to be ready. So to wrap up, now we're going to do some Q&A, and I'm going to take a quick look at questions, and then we'll go. So from George, he says, so therefore it's all about the data set. The larger size, the more efficient it gets. Yes and no, George. Thanks for a great question. So the larger the data set in general, yes, provided right now that it's properly labeled. However, I'm about to do a video after this that will talk about what all the current leaders in AI, the big companies, are focusing on. And the data set ultimately will not have to be labeled. Right now it does. So the bigger the data set and the better it's labeled, the better result you get. And that's the way AI has accelerated from the perfection of the neural net between 2012 and 2015 to now. All data sets had to be labeled, but that is changing quickly. And a second question from George. Thank you. I'm not in the sector you're discussing. However, the content you are supplying will pay dividends and the essence of human goodwill. Thank you. Thank you so much, George. I appreciate that, because my mission really is to help people. I really want to help people prepare for what's coming, which is job losses in the 30 to 50% range. We're talking Great Depression or worse. And once we acknowledge that, we can prepare ourselves for this future by finding a career that's AI safe. And I will be continuing to recommend those. But in general, safe careers are careers that will still require the human touch. I've mentioned nursing before. Nursing is a career that will, for the foreseeable future, require the human touch. And I don't want to go crazy on healthcare because we're not talking about that. We're talking about transportation. But there are a number of career paths that will be more or less immune in the medium term, which is all you can anticipate, 10 to 20 years, to getting automated out of existence. But one thing we know for sure, and you can tell it, I hope I was able to pull the pieces together in a way that makes it clear how rapidly things are changing in transportation now, and that fully autonomous vehicles are only 2 years away, and that this is going to have a dramatic impact on a massive sector of the economy, which is transportation. Now, finally, the reason I said it'll take a little bit longer in tractor trailer trucking is because the freeway piece with a tractor trailer is easy. The hard part is getting, once it's off the off ramp, navigating city streets and then backing the thing up to a dock. But all of this is solvable. So that's why you really have to start now to think about what you're really interested in doing and changing your career path. And by the way, one of the resources I'm going to be providing in the near future will help you really figure out what you are interested in doing and what your personality is best suited to. And then after that, we'll talk about skills, existing skill sets and stuff, and how those may be transferred to something new, which anyone can do given willpower. So we've been on for about half an hour. Thanks so much for tuning in. Thank you for the questions, George. We're going to do this again in 3 weeks. I will send out a notice of it, but 3 weeks from today, same time, 4 p.m. Eastern, we will do this again, and we'll take another industry sector and sort of pull all the pieces together about AI from all of my videos and other sources, and what's happening and how quickly change is coming. So thanks so much. I really appreciate all you guys. I hope I'm providing value, and I want to keep doing that and giving you knowledge, resources, and other things to help you. Take care. Bye-bye.